Hello, fourth grade, and welcome to Unit 1, Week 3 of Language Arts. I'm going to go over your vocabulary with you first, and then we'll get into your spelling words and your grammar for the week before we talk about your weekly stories. Your first word for your vocabulary is the word alter. When you alter something, you change it. So both fast and slow processes alter Earth's crust. If you take, for example, if you built something with blocks and then you moved some of those blocks into different places, you altered the shape or the structure or the building that you made. If you draw a picture and then you erase part of it and add other parts elsewhere, you have altered the picture that you drew. So to alter means to change or to reshape something. Your next word is the word collapse. Collapse means to fall down or cave in. So think about if you built a tower with blocks again, and you knock it over, right? Or someone walks by and knocks it over, that structure, that building that you made will collapse. It means to fall down. So a lot of times when there's an earthquake, if it's a really strong earthquake, buildings might collapse from all of the vibration and all the shaking that the earthquake causes. Your next word is the word destruction. When we're talking about destruction, we're talking about something being destroyed or ruined or harmed in some way. So the earthquake resulted in the destruction of the city or the destruction of the building. That means that building was destroyed or it was ruined and broken down. Your next word is the word severe. Severe means something that's really serious or really dangerous. So if he has a severe wound or a severe injury, right, he got hurt, that means it's not a small injury. It's not something small like a cut. It's something that's really bad. So he might be, if a person has a severe injury, maybe they were in a car accident and they had to go to the hospital. So severe means something that's really serious or really dangerous. Your next word is the word substantial. Substantial means a lot or a considerable amount of something. So if we say there was substantial damage from the fires, that means the fire caused a lot of damage. It didn't just burn like a small little patch of something. Maybe it burned down an entire house or it burned down part of a building. So substantial means a large amount or a considerable amount of something. Now, if something is unpredictable, remember we have the prefix over here, un, which means not, and predict, that's your base word or your root word that you're working with here. When you predict something, you can guess what's going to happen ahead of time. So if something is unpredictable, you are surprised by it. You don't know in advance, or you can't guess that it's going to happen. So the exact time of an earthquake is unpredictable. We can't guess necessarily when an earthquake is going to happen. We may be able to look at signs, but that doesn't tell us for sure. You can say the end of that movie that we watched or the end of the story that we read was unpredictable. I didn't know that was going to happen. I had no idea. So you could not predict or guess that's the way it was going to turn out. Your next word is the word hazard. A hazard is something that is dangerous or it can cause harm. So if we have a tornado is a hazard, it's a safety hazard, right? It puts a lot of people in danger. It puts a lot of structures and buildings and homes in danger. A fire is a hazard. Mudslides are a hazard. Anything that can cause danger or harm is a hazard. And lastly, you have the word crisis. A crisis is a time of great danger or difficulty. So right now we're in the middle of a pandemic. This is a health crisis that we're in, right? It's something that's widespread. It's affecting a lot of people. A lot of people are in danger of being sick. So it is a crisis. If you're in an area that's experiencing hurricanes, that's a crisis because you're constantly trying to deal with the danger that's around you and to protect yourself from it. Now for your spelling words, you have the long E sound for your spelling words this week. And we make the long vowel E sound in a couple of different ways, and you're going to see it as we're going through the words. So your first word is evening, zebra, breathe, league, squeaky, healer, sleek, indeed, reef, deed, speech, wheeze, concrete, scheme, belief, chief, honey, donkey, family, weary, bail, pale, eight, appeal, and freedom. Now, while you're looking through these words, we have a long E that's an E by itself, and then a consonant, and then another vowel after that. Or we have an EA. So the first one, E consonant E, is like evening. EA is like breathe or healer. A lot of times our final Y will make an E sound like squeaky. So the EA and the Y all make that long E sound. Or you can make a long E sound by doubling the E. So EE, like sleek or indeed. You can also make a long E sound by adding a final E, so a silent E at the end. So concrete. This silent E makes the E that came before a long E sound. Same with the word scheme. You can also make the long E sound with the IE vowel team, like leaf or chief, or EY like honey or donkey, or just a Y by itself like family or weary. So there's several different ways to make that long E sound. Either it's a final E, EE, EA, IE, Y, EY, or E consonant letter and then an E. Now let's go into your grammar. Now our grammar today, now that we're moving into week 3, is a little bit more involved. So we've got more grammar notes today, but it'll be hopefully easy to follow. And I did add a supplemental video to help you understand it a little bit better. So this week we're talking about clauses. A clause is a group of words that has a subject and a verb. And we have 2 different kinds of clauses. We have independent and we have dependent. So today we're just going to talk about independent clauses. An independent clause is basically a simple sentence. It can stand alone as a sentence. It shows a complete thought, even if it's really, really small. So a simple sentence has one independent clause. The boy runs. The boy is our subject, runs is our verb. And that shows a complete thought, so it's an independent clause. It doesn't need anything else. It can stand alone as its own sentence. Now, a compound sentence has 2 or more independent clauses. Independent clauses in a compound sentence are usually joined by something called coordinating conjunctions. Now, a coordinating conjunction, or the abbreviation, the fanboys, helps you to put together 2 simple sentences, 2 of those independent clauses, and put them into one sentence. Now, when you're adding a coordinating conjunction, usually there will be a comma to separate the first independent clause. Then you'll have your coordinating conjunction, and those we're going to talk about in just a second. And then you'll have your second independent clause. So, I will buy apples can stand alone as its own sentence. I will buy bananas can stand alone as its own sentence. So over here we have a comma, and we have one of our coordinating conjunctions, which are listed right down here. So the fanboys are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. So those words are called the fanboys because the first letter of each one of those, when you put it together, it makes the word fanboys. So it helps you to remember it. So the fanboys are our coordinating conjunctions. When we put together 2 independent clauses, we put a comma, one of our coordinating conjunctions, and then our second independent clause. Same for the sentence. We will eat pizza, comma, or we will eat spaghetti. We will eat pizza is an independent clause and can be a sentence by itself. We will eat spaghetti, independent clause, and can be a sentence by itself. If we want to combine them, we're going to add a comma and one of our coordinating conjunctions in the middle and combine them into a compound sentence. Now, the easy way to remember coordinating conjunctions is these are connecting words. They connect or they join words and phrases and clauses. So we can use them in many different ways. Now, we have to use a comma and a coordinating conjunction when we're putting together two independent clauses to make a compound sentence. The easy way to remember that is you need a comma and a fanboy when you're putting together two small sentences into one long sentence. Now, you do not put a comma when you're connecting just words or phrases, which can't be sentences by themselves. And we're going to talk about that as well. And you can also use something called a semicolon to join two independent clauses. And a semicolon looks like this. It's a comma with a little period on top. It means you're stopping for a little bit longer than you would with a comma, but not a full stop like you would with a period. So again, our fanboys are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Coordinating conjunctions, we said, will connect words, phrases, or clauses that are the same kind. So either they're both nouns, or they're both verbs, or they're both adjectives, and so on. So two nouns, and remember, a noun is a person, place, or thing, no commas, cats and cows, that's it. If we're combining two verbs, which are action words, again, no comma, shouts or kicks, those are two action words. If we're using them to combine adjectives, which are describing words, words that tell you about a noun, again, no comma, short and simple is an example of combining two adjectives with a coordinating conjunction. Also, when we're combining adverbs, adverbs tell you how you do something. So if you're walking quickly, or you're reading carefully, or you're speaking softly, those are coordinating conjunctions, or sorry, those are adverbs that tell you the way that you're doing something, which again, since these are not sentences by themselves, you don't put a comma, you just put the coordinating conjunction in the middle. Now, when we are combining independent clauses, now remember, we said independent clauses, just like up here, are simple sentences. So they are sentences, they're just really small ones, but they meet all the rules to be a sentence. They have subject and a verb, and they show a complete thought. So for these ones, we do use a comma. So Dylan writes better songs, but Brittany sells more records. So I do have another video for you right here on coordinating conjunctions and the fanboys and simple sentences. These are actually two videos. So this one is going to be your coordinating conjunctions and your fanboys. And this one is going to be your simple sentences and your your fragments and your run-on sentences. So make sure you check out both of these videos. I do have a couple diagrams for you to look at to help you understand these a little bit better. So for coordinating conjunctions, you have to have a sentence, then a comma in the coordinating conjunction, and then the other simple sentence. And your fanboys are right here across the side. So your rule number one is you put a comma before the fanboys when they connect two independent clauses or two simple sentences. Rule two, if the first sentence has 5 or fewer words, you can leave the comma out. So for what I want you guys to focus on, we're going to focus predominantly or mainly on rule number 1. Now, your coordinating conjunctions, if you're not sure how to use them or you're not sure what they mean, there's also this nice little graphic right here that I put into our notes, so you can come back to this later and read through the example sentences and what those coordinating conjunctions mean so that you're using them the right way. So that will take you through to the end of your grammar notes. Now, I know this is a good amount of information, but it's things that you've been doing in your writing already. And now we're just learning the rules and the names for these different things. The next thing we're going to get into is your story. So I'm going to pull up your story. All right, so let's get into our weekly story. So we're going to go to Unit 1, Week 3, and we're going to be reading the story about earthquakes. Now, this week, the genre or the kind of writing that we're going to be reading about is called an expository text. Expository texts are information. So it's teaching you something. It's giving you facts and information about a real thing. So it's a nonfiction piece of writing.
Genre: expository text. Earthquakes by Sneed B. Collard III. Essential question: how do people respond to natural disasters? Read how science can help people prepare for earthquakes. A shifting planet. We like to believe that the ground under our feet is solid and secure. People who have felt the ground shake know differently. They have lived through an earthquake. Earth's crust resembles a jigsaw puzzle more than a solid sphere. Like a puzzle, the crust is divided into different pieces that fit together. These pieces are called plates. Earth's plates float on top of a layer just below the crust called the upper mantle. The upper mantle is solid rock, but it behaves like a thick gel. Heat from deep inside the earth moves through the rock and causes it to slowly swirl and flow. Myanmar residents inspect large cracks on a road after an earthquake struck the area. Dr. Inés Cifuentes is a seismologist, someone who studies earthquakes. She likes to compare the movement of Earth's plates to boiling milk. When you boil milk, she says, you get that little surface layer of cream on top that moves and dances around. That's what's going on in the Earth, except that Earth's crust is much harder than the layer of cream. As the mantle boils, it pushes and pulls the plates above it. It's at the edges of these plates, Dr. Cifuentes explains, where we have most earthquakes. The white lines on the map above show plates on Earth's surface. The red dots show where earthquakes have occurred. Earth's largest quake, a first-hand account. Dr. Inés Cifuentes became a seismologist for a very good reason. She and her family lived through the largest recorded earthquake in history. This was the 1960 earthquake that struck Chile. As Dr. Cifuentes explains, in April 1960, my family moved to Santiago, Chile. Just a few weeks later, on May 21st, we were woken up by strong shaking. Then, 33 hours later, a gigantic earthquake hit the southern part of Chile. And with it, an enormous tsunami. About a year later, we took a trip to the northern end of the earthquake zone. And that's where I saw that the land had actually been raised up a meter or so. I saw these huge changes, and that impressed me, that the Earth could actually do that. Later, as a graduate student, I wanted to know how big that earthquake was, how long it lasted, and whether it was preceded by a slow earthquake. I worked on this problem for 4 years. I was able to calculate that Earth's largest recorded earthquake had a magnitude of 9.5. I also confirmed that a slow precursor, forerunner, had occurred 15 minutes before the main earthquake. I am very proud of this work. People stare at a gigantic crack on a street in Valdivia caused by the 1960 Chilean earthquake. Whose fault is it? Earth's plates crash together, spread apart, and slide against each other. Wherever they do this, they cause breaks in Earth's crust. Seismologists call these breaks faults. Usually the blocks of rock on each side of a fault just sit there stuck together. But when enough pressure builds, the two sides of the fault can suddenly shift or slip. This sudden movement releases waves of energy. These waves travel through the Earth. We feel them as earthquakes. Most faults do not slip and cause earthquakes. Around the globe, however, active faults cause hundreds of earthquakes every day. Most are too small for us to notice. Once in a while, Earth unleashes a whopper. The diagram below shows a normal fault, which is a crack or fracture in the Earth's surface. Movement along the fault can sometimes cause earthquakes. Measuring earthquakes. Seismologists record earthquakes using machines called seismographs. These measure shaking or ground motion. After an earthquake, scientists read their seismographs. They use their readings to calculate the earthquake's size or magnitude. Magnitude scales are set up so that each whole number is 10 times larger than the number before it. A magnitude 7.0 earthquake, for instance, is 10 times larger than a magnitude 6.0 quake. Truly giant earthquakes happen about once a year. These are quakes with a magnitude of 8.0 or greater. They occur only on very large faults and can cause severe destruction. Dr. Cifuentes explains, "The only way you can get an earthquake like the 2011 Japan earthquake is where one of Earth's plates is sliding under another one. This is the only kind of place where you have a fault long enough and wide enough to release that kind of energy." Seismologists gave the 2011 Japan earthquake a 9.0 magnitude. It was the fourth largest earthquake ever recorded. They believe that the earthquake occurred on a fault more than 150 miles, 250 kilometers long. It shook Japan for 3 to 5 minutes. It was so powerful that it altered the geography of the country. Surprisingly, it wasn't the shaking of the ground that did the most damage. A massive wave proved much more destructive. Seismographs help scientists determine the magnitude or size of an earthquake. Stop and check. Reread. How do scientists measure earthquakes? Reread to check your understanding.
All right, take a minute to go back and take a look at the tools that scientists use to measure earthquakes, what those tools are called, and how they work. You can find that information here on this page. After you've had a chance to go ahead and do that, share that information with one of the adults at home and talk with them about what you've read so far.
Tsunami terror. When an earthquake occurs under the ocean, it often moves a substantial amount of water above it. This creates a fast-moving wave called a tsunami. Tsunami. Out at sea, the wave may be only a few feet high. As it reaches shore, however, the wave can tower into a monster. It can hurl water for miles inland. Tsunamis can travel thousands of miles. In 1960, Earth's largest recorded earthquake struck the country of Chile. It produced tsunami waves up to 82 feet, 25 meters high along the coast. The tsunami also raced across the Pacific Ocean at a speed of more than 150 miles per hour. It struck the shorelines of Hawaii, Japan, Alaska, and other places. Hundreds of people drowned. The disaster zone in Kesennuma, Japan, 2011, 100 days after the massive earthquake and tsunami. The 2011 Japan earthquake produced tsunami waves more than 30 feet, 10 meters high. The 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake in southern Asia produced 50 feet, 15-meter tsunamis. These tsunamis engulfed entire cities and shorelines. The waves swept away buildings, cars, and people. Japan, southern Asia, and Chile had experienced many powerful earthquakes and tsunamis before. Why were so many people unprepared? Predicting earthquakes. Seismologists are very good at measuring earthquakes. However, they still can't predict when earthquakes will happen. There was a time, Dr. Cifuentes explains, when I think scientists felt that predicting earthquakes was just around the corner, that we were going to be able to predict earthquakes very soon. But it's clear now that it's not around the corner. In fact, some have given up entirely on predicting earthquakes. One reason that earthquakes are unpredictable is that scientists cannot collect enough information to understand where and when an earthquake might happen next. Although scientists have placed special instruments in many earthquake zones, earthquakes still surprise us. Scientists, for example, had believed the next big earthquake in Japan would happen farther to the south, closer to Tokyo. Instead, it struck farther north. A powerful tsunami forced people to flee to the roof of a control tower in a flooded airport. Planning for earthquakes. Even though we can't predict earthquakes, we can prepare for them. Many seismologists help make information available to people so they can plan for and respond to earthquakes. This is especially important near coastal areas. Once the shaking goes on for more than 30 seconds, Dr. Cifuentes says, it's pretty simple. You have to run away from the ocean and run uphill. You have maybe 15 or 20 minutes to reach higher ground. How cities are built also affects how many people survive an earthquake. Cities in many countries have special building laws. Buildings must be strong and flexible. That way they won't collapse during an earthquake. In some countries, however, buildings are often poorly built. The 2010 Haiti earthquake, for example, killed between 46,000 and 316,000 people. Unlike the earthquake in Japan, many of these people were killed by collapsing buildings and falling debris. However, earthquakes don't just destroy, they also create. They help make the mountains, coasts, and other landscapes we see around us, Dr. Cifuentes explains. This is worth remembering as we learn how to predict and survive earthquakes in the future. Utility ducts like this one are being constructed to protect underground wires, cables, and pipes in the event of an earthquake. What to do during an earthquake. If you are indoors, drop to the ground and crawl under a sturdy piece of furniture until the shaking stops. Stay away from glass, windows, outside doors and walls, and anything that could fall, such as a hanging light or fan. Stay in bed if you are there when the earthquake strikes. Protect your head with a pillow. Only move from the bed if there is a heavy light or fan above you. Use a doorway for shelter only if you know it is strongly supported. Stay inside until the shaking stops and it is safe to go outside. Do not use elevators. If you are outdoors, move away from buildings, streetlights, and utility wires. Avoid any space where there is falling debris, such as glass. Once in the open, stay there until the shaking stops. Students raise awareness about earthquakes by participating in a nationwide earthquake drill. Stop and check. Reread. How can you protect yourself if you are indoors during an earthquake? Reread to check your understanding.
So take a minute to go back and look at this page and think about earthquake drills that you've had at school and what kind of things you have to do to keep yourself safe and to avoid any kind of harm or danger. Now we've come to the end of our story in our literature anthology, or our expository text that we read there. We're going to hop into our reading and writing workshop, week 3 of unit 1, and we're going to read about more natural disasters. So our essential question again is, how do people respond during a natural disaster? Here you can see our vocabulary words one more time. Feel free to pause the video so you can go through and reread them with the example sentences and questions, or you could read them on the screen. Otherwise, we're going to jump into our next story. And this is another expository text, or a piece of writing that gives us information.
Genre: expository. A World of Change. The Grand Canyon Skywalk, Arizona. Earth may seem as if it is a large rock that never changes. Actually, our planet is in a constant state of change. Natural changes take place every day. These activities alter the surface of Earth. Some of these changes take place slowly over many years. Others happen in just minutes. Whether they are slow or fast, both kinds of changes have a great effect on our planet. Slow and steady. Some of Earth's biggest changes can't be seen. That is because they are happening very slowly. Weathering, erosion, and deposition are three natural processes that change the surface of the world. They do it one grain of sand at a time. Weathering occurs when rain, snow, sun, and wind break down rocks into smaller pieces. These tiny pieces of rock turn into soil, but they are not carried away from the landform. Erosion occurs when weathered pieces of rock are carried away by a natural force such as a river. This causes landforms on Earth to get smaller. They may even completely collapse over time. The Grand Canyon is an example of the effect of erosion. It was carved over thousands of years by the Colorado River. After the process of erosion, dirt and rocks are then dropped in a new location. This process is called deposition. Over time, a large collection of deposits may occur in one place. Deposition by water can build up a beach. Deposition by wind can create a substantial landform, such as a sand dune.
Now, before we move on, erosion and deposition are two things that you're going to hear about here. There are things that you've covered in previous years in science, and there are things that will come up as you move forward, learning about science and reading more expository texts. So erosion is when pieces are broken off of a rock, and deposition is when those pieces are dropped somewhere. So remember those and remember the difference between them, because you're going to see more of those.
Although erosion is a slow process, it still creates problems for people. Some types of erosion are dangerous. They can be seen as a hazard to communities. To help protect against beach erosion, people build structures that block ocean waves from the shore. They may also use heavy rocks to keep the land from eroding. Others grow plants along the shore. The roots of the plants help hold the soil and make it less likely to erode. Unfortunately, people cannot protect the land when fast natural processes occur. Fast and powerful. Fast natural processes, like slow processes, change the surface of Earth, but fast processes are much more powerful. They are often called natural disasters because of the destruction they cause. Volcanic eruptions and landslides are just two examples. Volcanoes form around openings in Earth's crust. When pressure builds under Earth's surface, hot melted rock called magma is forced upwards. It flows up through the volcano and out through the opening. Eruptions can occur without warning. They have the potential to cause a crisis in a community. Like volcanic eruptions, landslides can happen without warning. They occur when rocks and dirt, loosened by heavy rains, slide down a hill or mountain. Some landslides are small. Others can be quite large and cause severe damage. Be prepared. In contrast to slow-moving processes, people cannot prevent the effects of fast-moving natural disasters. Instead, scientists try to predict when these events will occur so that they can warn people. Still, some disasters are unpredictable and strike without warning. It is important for communities to have an emergency plan in place so that they can be evacuated quickly. The surface of Earth constantly changes through natural processes. These processes can be gradual or swift. They help to make Earth the amazing planet that it is. This diagram shows a volcano erupting: cone, crater, vent, pipe, magma chamber. Make connections. Talk about different ways that people prepare for natural disasters. How can you help others who have been in a natural disaster?
So take a moment to think about how people prepare for things like volcanic eruptions, how, when we were reading in our story in the other book, how people prepare for earthquakes. And if you are familiar with any other natural disasters like hurricanes or tornadoes or tsunamis, think about all the ways that people prepare to keep themselves safe in the event that one of those things happen. Now that we finished our reading for this week, I do want you to go back and reread those stories daily, because that's going to be what your test is about at the end of the week. I want to get into our comprehension strategy and skill that help us to understand and really get into what the author is trying to tell us. So one of our key comprehension strategies, which we've been already working on since we started, is to reread. That's when you're reading something again to help soak up all of that information that the author is giving you, because a lot of times, especially with an expository text, there's a lot of information in that piece that you're reading, and sometimes you don't remember it all. So rereading is a great strategy to help you really understand and remember all of the things that you're being taught by that piece of expository writing.
Reread. When you read an informational text, you may come across facts and ideas that are new to you. As you read A World of Change, you can reread the difficult sections to make sure you understand them and to help you remember key details. Find text evidence. You may not be sure why a volcano erupts. Reread the section Fast and Powerful on page 52 of A World of Change. Fast and powerful. Fast natural processes, like slow processes, change the surface of Earth, but fast processes are much more powerful. They are often called natural disasters because of the destruction they cause. Volcanic eruptions and landslides are just two examples. Volcanoes form around openings in Earth's crust. When pressure builds under Earth's surface, hot melted rock called magma is forced upwards. It flows up through the volcano and out through the opening. Eruptions can occur without warning. They have the potential to cause a crisis in a community. I read that when pressure builds under Earth's surface, magma is forced upwards. From this, I understand that pressure below the surface causes a volcano to erupt. Your turn. What happens to rock during weathering? Reread the section Slow and Steady on page 51 to find out. As you read, remember to use the strategy reread.
So let's stop and think over here and go through our your turn question. So it says, what happens to rocks during weathering? So we know that weathering is when the pieces are broken off, and erosion is when those broken off tiny pieces, right, are carried away. And then deposition is when they are deposited or they are put, dropped, or stopped somewhere. So it's asking us, what happens to rocks during weathering? Weathering is the part, if we go back to page 51, we can see right over here, weathering occurs when rain, snow, sun, or wind break down rock into smaller pieces. So the weathering is when things are broken down. The erosion is when those teeny tiny pieces that are now broken off are carried away or swept away, either by water, by wind, etc. And deposition is when they are deposited or they are dropped somewhere. So that's the place where they stop is the place where the deposition happened or where they were deposited. Let's take a look at our comprehension skill. And one of the ways we understand the text that we're reading is by comparing and contrasting. And one of the ways that we do that is by using what we call right here a Venn diagram. Now, a Venn diagram is basically two overlapping ovals or circles, where on the outside is how those things are different from each other, and on the inside is the things that are the same about both. So let's go ahead and listen to this section.
Compare and contrast. Authors use text structure to organize the information in a text. Comparison is one kind of text structure. Authors who use this text structure show how things are alike and different. Find text evidence. Looking back at pages 51 through 52 of A World of Change, I can reread to learn how slow natural processes and fast natural processes are alike and different. Words such as some, but, both, and like let me know that a comparison is being made. Venn diagram. Different. Happen over a long period of time. Happen suddenly. Different. People can protect the land. People cannot protect the land. Alike. Change the surface of Earth. Your turn. Reread the section Fast and Powerful. Compare and contrast volcanoes and landslides. List the information in the graphic organizer.
So now you have the opportunity to practice comparing and contrasting using a Venn diagram. And you can go back and do that independently, or you could do it with mom and dad. Otherwise, you can click on the little icon here to do your work in there. We're going to move on and talk more about our genre and go over our vocabulary strategy that helps us understand the meaning of words that have multiple meanings or words that have more than one meaning, and what kind of strategies we can use to help us figure out which meaning they're talking about.
Expository. The selection A World of Change is an expository text. Expository text explains facts about a topic, includes text features. Find text evidence. A World of Change is an expository text. It gives many facts about Earth's processes. Each section has a heading that tells me what the section is about. The diagram gives me more information. Text features. Diagrams. Diagrams show the parts of something or how a process works. They have labels that tell about their different parts. Headings. Headings tell what a section of text is mostly about.
Now, when we're looking at these
Expository.
when we're looking at these different text features, a diagram is usually a drawing or some kind of image that's describing the way something happens. It's got labels, it's got words, it's usually got maybe some arrows, and it's helping us to visualize or to see what the thing that they're describing is in a different way. Now, headings are like titles for different sections. You'll usually see them printed bigger than the rest of the words. A lot of times they'll be in a different color. They may be bold, which means they're written with thicker letters than the rest of the writing. And those headings give us clues about the section that we're going to read and what the main idea is in there. Now let's go ahead and jump into our vocab strategy for the week, which is multiple meaning words. So you're going to come across a lot of words that have multiple meanings or more than one meaning. And sometimes to figure out which meaning they're talking about, we use our context clues, or we use the clues from the words and sentences around that word to help us figure out which meaning is the correct one for what we're reading.
Multiple meaning words. As you read A World of Change, you will come across some multiple meaning words. These are words that have more than one meaning. To figure out the meaning of a multiple meaning word, check the words and phrases near it for clues. Find text evidence. When I read page 52 of A World of Change, I see the word block. There are a few different meanings for block, so this is a multiple meaning word. The word protect and the phrase ocean waves from the shore help me figure out which meaning is being used in the sentence. To help protect against beach erosion, people build structures that block ocean waves from the shore.
Now, some other common multiple meaning words that you may know are like the word duck. So if I say the word duck, you don't know which one I'm talking about. Do I mean for you to squat down underneath something, or do I mean the animal? But if I use it in a sentence, then you will know right away from those clues that are around it which meaning I'm talking about. So if I say the duck ate the breadcrumbs, you know I'm talking about the animal. But if I tell you duck under your table, you know that what I'm telling you to do is to squat down. So a lot of times with those multiple meaning words, we just need to look at what's going on around it, and those clues will help us figure out what the author or the writer is telling us. So let's go ahead and jump into this section where we're going to talk a little bit about our grammar, and we're going to read a writing piece that talks about compound sentences.
Write about the text. I answered this question. How does the author's use of text structure help us understand slow and fast natural processes? Use text evidence. In A World of Change, the author uses the compare and contrast text structure to help us understand slow and fast natural processes. Slow processes change the world one grain of sand at a time, but fast processes are more sudden and powerful. Both processes have a great effect on our planet. For example, erosion slowly carves canyons, but volcanic eruptions change the land in the blink of an eye. Comparing and contrasting the processes helps us understand the different ways the planet is shaped. Grammar. Use a comma before a conjunction in a compound sentence. Focus on a topic. I used facts to support the topic. Text structure. I included examples to show comparison. Figurative language. I wrote an idiom to make my point.
Okay, so let's break this down and go through it one part at a time. Now, when we were talking about compound sentences, remember we said a compound sentence is one where we are combining two independent or clauses or two simple sentences. And we do that by using a comma and a coordinating conjunction between the two sentences. Now, as we go on, we see that the author didn't just present their own idea. They used facts to show that this is a real thing. And here's my evidence, or here are my facts to support what I'm saying. They also use examples to strengthen their writing, and they use figurative language. So an idiom is a phrase that means more than just the words it's made up of. And I believe we talked about this last week. So if I say something is a piece of cake, I mean it's easy. I don't mean it's actually a piece of cake. So over here, the idiom that they used was in the blink of an eye, which just means that something happened very, very quickly. So this takes us to the end of our language arts notes for this week. If you have any questions, definitely sign on to our live sessions. Otherwise, please make sure you're rereading your story and you're reviewing your notes and turning in your work on time. That's all I've got for you today, fourth grade. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. Have a great day. Bye-bye.